any medical treatment. None of us. And we're bleeding, and you could hear these guys enjoying what they were doing. There was no question about what's your intent, why you're doing what you're doing. It was about, I want to inflict pain on your black ass. And they had their day, and they did it.
And they did this in front of all of these folks who were there nonviolently. And some of them came just for curiosity's sake. Well, the next day we had scores of people wanting to join what we were doing. And
we met that night, and the faculty, meanwhile, met that night and was saying what's happening to our campus, basically. And big name faculty by that time, not just, faculty who were sympathetic to us, saying basically the campus is breaking down over this issue and it's got to be dealt with. The administration responds zilch. The faculty members say to the administration, wait a minute, if we don't stop this, there's going to be bloodshed on the campus, meaning the police are going to kill somebody.
It had become so bad by that time, that the potential for violence everyone felt was so great, or that things were coming to some kind of head, that night, I believe it was the night of January 8th, a big meeting was held at a church in Pacoima of everyone, all the blacks and those who were in support of them, to sort of chart what could be done and what should be done. We had reserved the free speech area for the following morning, January 9th, for a meeting.
On January 9th, when I came to campus, I already knew, probably leaving home, that it was going to be a day that would live in my mind for a long time. Things were tense. You didn't know what was going to happen.
So we came onto the campus and expected to hold a very peaceful rally because we did not want a continuation of the bloodshed from the day before and the police beating up on us. We were the ones getting hurt.
We had decided the night before that if there was any police action, we were not going to take a confrontative approach, that we were a nonviolent movement, that we wanted to make the issues clear.
That morning, before we even got to campus, the administration had declared a state of emergency on the campus, and declared that there could be no assembly on campus.
But after this bloodletting the day before, the students on the campus, there was no functioning classes anymore. The students at 8 o'clock in the morning were already in the free speech area, just wondering what was going to happen. So we went into the cafeteria, and we brought out chairs, and we lined them up in the free speech area. So there was probably 200-300 chairs there, and where it would have been really impossible to move around and fight the police.
We could see to the distance off to our right, where there is a large lawn area next to the music building, numerous trucks, police vehicles, cars, trucks, buses. I mean, it looked like an army.
By the time the police came out, there was probably 3,000 or 4,000 people out there. By 9:30, 10 o'clock, which is the height of student, presence on the campus, everybody wants to know what's going on. Some sympathetic, some curious.
The announcement was made by the police. They identified themselves that they were here on campus, and they were announcing that it was prohibited on that day to have that rally.
I remember the announcement. It was that sort of disembodied voice coming through a megaphone, saying that we had 2 minutes to disperse, and that if we didn't, we would all be arrested. Well, the announcement was made. We refused to disperse. The police moved in.
Then they came into the crowd, and they knew who the leadership was. They had a list, and they just went, get that guy, get that guy, get that guy, and they proceeded to yank all of us. I was speaking on the stage. They yanked me down, took me away.
Because they arrested some of the leaders. There was no one up there at the microphone, so some of us would go and replace those who were arrested, knowing that we were probably going to be arrested as well. And we didn't get to say too many words, and we were arrested and escorted to the buses, the police vehicles.
Every time they'd yank one of the SDS or BSU people out of the audience, somebody from the surrounding crowd came and sat down. So the crowd never shrunk, and rather than being intimidated, it just grew. And pretty soon, people were standing up to the microphone who weren't even political, weren't active, and saying, this is outrageous, this is fascism. They're pulling, by then it's 100, 110, 120 arrests. Student government people were standing up, being arrested. Sundial staff people were being arrested. Freshman students who, were outraged and didn't know what, even politically, what the history was of the campus, they were being arrested.
The big buses were there to cart us down to the Van Nuys jail, and we were all taken in and booked. Before we were booked, we were all thrown into a huge holding tank, and that turned into really a sort of magnificent teach-in, as we all talked about what was happening and why it was happening and how such things could happen and so on. And then we were individually booked and put into cells. And it's the first and only time I've been in jail. And I remember walking in front of the window like a caged animal, thinking to myself, oh my God, I am never going to see another woman again.
So it was one of the most peaceful mass arrests in the history of probably the college movement. But at the same time, it broke the administration's back because they didn't know what to do. They couldn't respond to this. This was solidarity. This was students being arrested. They thought they could behead it. And rather than beheading it and killing the monster, it sprang two new heads and created an instantaneous new generation of leaders.
And finally, the administration acquiesced and gave in on all of our demands. The only demand they didn't give on was amnesty, but we had decided that at this point it was more important to win these programs that still exist at this campus. One of the few places that still have its EOP programs and studies programs, special studies programs, still exist. We decided that was more important, and we accepted the settlement even without the amnesty.
Those actions, demonstrations that took place were forced on us because there were no other channels to use to address our grievances.